we now have Karol Markowicz. Karol, appreciate you joining us. What are you hearing? We're talking about the New York City alleged subway shooter being arrested. What have you heard about the investigation that is going on there?
So I had known that they picked him up today in the East Village, and I don't know what's going to happen, going forward, but it's a very interesting case where they have known about him for a while, and he was on their radar. I'm looking forward to hearing what happened here. But yeah, from what I'm told, it was not somebody unknown to them.
Karol,
them being authorities.
Karol, the governor Hochul went on some of New York, went on some long-winded, this will never happen again, and there's been too much and all. I mean, it honestly just felt sort of bizarre. I mean, if nothing else, she's making promises that she clearly cannot keep without any ideas or policies or anything behind it. It just feels like this is a woman who, at a moment of real seriousness, real crisis in New York City, which is what is going on here. This place is rough. It's why you left. It's why many people are considering leaving. She is not up to the moment, it felt like yesterday, at all. It felt really tone deaf.
I completely agree. The thing is, look, a lunatic, can shoot up a place. It can happen anywhere. The fact that it happened on the N train in Brooklyn yesterday is obviously very sad and horrible. But what's really going on is that this crime spree in New York City is really serious. So last night there was a stabbing on the subway that is barely getting any coverage, and these stabbings happen all the time now. So we have a situation where, yes, obviously this event is atrocious and horrible, and my heart really goes out to all New Yorkers. I still consider myself a New Yorker. I feel very strongly about that city. But what we're really missing is that the subway is in disarray and the city is in disarray. And so just targeting or focusing on this one event by the governor, I think that she's really missing the mark, because these stabbings are happening all the time and nobody's stopping them.
Karol, you had you've continued to talk about the freedom that you have in Florida compared to what's going on in New York. I'm sure you've seen Philadelphia has reinstituted an indoor mask mandate. Kids ages 2 to 5, basically in preschool, are still required to wear masks in New York City, which is crazy. And as we began the show today, a 15-day extension of masks in airplanes by the Biden administration and the CDC. How does this ever end? Buck and I were talking about this. I'm curious what you think. Are we basically going to enter into a world where 10 or 15% of people wear masks forever? Because at this point, I don't know how this ever ends.
Yeah, I also don't know how this ends, because 2 weeks, obviously, who believes this is going to end in 2 weeks? Like 2 weeks to flatten this curve again? I think we're in a crisis because there is this mania that has taken hold, and people have become so afraid of COVID and so terrified to live their lives, and thinking that, the masks that they wear on an airplane is going to make an iota of difference is terrifying. I think we really need to move away from this mass hysteria, but of course, all these blue areas are really catering to it. And I don't want to sound like, when all you have a hammer, the whole world's a nail, but I think a lot of these issues that we're having across the country are all related. So when we talk about violence on the subway, I really do think it's still COVID related. When you have a masked 2-year-old, you're sending the message that the city remains unsafe due to COVID. So people are not returning to the offices. When they don't return to the offices, the subways are emptier. When the subways are emptier, crime is more likely to happen. When crime is more likely to happen, it lends just an atmosphere of chaos. And that's what we have right now in a lot of major cities. And I think all of this could just be tied back to an insane and intense COVID mitigation policy that has not worked.
Speaking to Karol Markowicz, New York Post columnist, friend of the show. Karol, it feels like a huge difference maker, because we talk about accountability a lot here, and Clay talks about a reckoning in the midterms, a tsunami of Republican wins. And this isn't just I like my team to win. It's I want America to go back to normalcy. Like I want an end to the psychological pandemic. And the only way we get there is if Democrats get destroyed at the ballot box, and therefore their power is contingent upon no longer catering to the double-masked lunatics walking around by themselves outside, looking at people breathing air like normal human beings, like they're the problem. parents, I just think it's so essential that parents remember who betrayed them and children during this pandemic. Do you think that are enough Republicans making this case? I mean, what can we do? I think there needs to be a huge campaign to remind parents all across America in places that lock down, shut down schools, who was responsible for that madness, who bent the knee to the teachers' unions. How do we do that? How do we make sure that all the parents remember?
Yeah, I hope that Republicans all across the country are running on these issues. I'm not sure that all of them are. I think especially in kind of blue cities, it gets tougher and tougher for them to say, we should have had schools open. A lot of people in these blue cities agree with them. And as you watch migration to places like Florida, I can't help but think that Florida's getting redder, but places like New York, New Jersey, where people are coming from, are getting bluer because conservatives who are leaving. I have not met a single person who has moved to Florida in the last 2 years who has been on the left. All of them are conservative. All of them have left places with crazy policies and moved to freedom. So as these places get bluer, I worry that these insane policies are going to continue. In purple places, they might be able to send a message with this next election and say, look, you did crazy things. We're going to punish you for it at the ballot box. And maybe that'll shift some opinions. But in places like New York City, people want this. People like the masking. I don't see a large groundswell of people saying it's insane that we mask 2 to 4 year olds. Nobody else in the world is doing this. Why are we doing this? There's so few people that protested. It scares me for the future.
Karol, you're a mom, and I've got 3 kids. And back in August, as all of this sort of domestic terrorism rose up at school boards, you could feel the budding anger. And I think that definitely fueled what happened in Virginia. And to your point, if people hadn't bailed on New Jersey, maybe Murphy would have lost there, right? A couple 100,000 people could have made a big difference. A lot of those people have relocated to other places. Do you think the mom anger is going, based on the people that you interact with and you talk to, is going to retain its cogency and fire through this November election so that we get what Buck and I want, I think what you want as well, which is a reckoning on COVID policies? Or is it going to fade in the next 6 to 7 months? How do you see it playing out?
No, I think through November, it absolutely stays sky high. There's so much wrong right now with the country that I think that parents will be sending a message. And for a lot of parents, what happened in the last 2 years, they're not over it. They're not over the fact that, for example, in New York City, private schools opened, but public schools didn't. They're not over this kind of thing. They're not over that Randy Weingarten, teachers had policies that kept schools closed. I hear so
Thank
much
you. You're breaking
happened.
up a little bit there at the end, but you're always fantastic.
I
Karol
think some
Markowicz.
libs are hacking her phone.
I think they're afraid of the mom revolution, and they're trying to take out one of the moms there. But Karol does fantastic work. New York Post. We'll talk to her again soon.
As promised, with us right now, Senator Ron Johnson of Wisconsin. Senator, good to have you back.
Well, guys, hope you're doing well.
So you may have seen, Senator, because it did get a fair bit of attention yesterday. Joe Biden currently has a 33% approval rating, according to the latest Quinnipiac poll. And then on top of that, he actually has a 26% approval rating among Hispanics, which got a lot of attention. We know that things are going badly for the Biden regime, but is it just going to keep getting worse, or do you think that have they hit the basement? Are they finally down at the bottom?
No, my question is, how can they be so high? You take a look at almost every policy that he has enacted, whether it's canceling the Keystone XL pipeline, which is his shot across the bow announcing his war on fossil fuel, which drove up the price of not only gasoline but also energy, which is a component to every product. The open border, which is going to get a lot worse when they cancel Title 42. Out of control spending, sparking 40-year high inflation. You see the producer price index up over 11% now. The embarrassing and dangerous surrender in Afghanistan, which tempted tyrants like Vladimir Putin. And then not rushing the types of weaponry that Ukraine needs to defend itself and win the war, dragging its feet on that. How could anybody approve of this?
Senator, appreciate you coming on the show with us. What do you think about, we started off the show, we've been talking about it a lot, the idea of Elon Musk buying Twitter, and also simultaneously what seems to clearly be occurring, which is the forces that would not allow Twitter to be an open marketplace of ideas becoming arrayed against him. How do you see this playing out? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I was listening to your show earlier when that announcement came that the SEC and the Department of Justice are opening up investigations. Brazen isn't the right word. I guess it's sadly predictable that they would politicize this to such a great extent. But no, let's face it, free speech is under assault. And it's under assault by the corrupt and complicit media that put Joe Biden in office. Let's say he campaigned from his basement. They suppressed, they censored. Senator Grassley's my report on Hunter Biden, the laptop, Tony Bobolinsky's testimony, all that was censored. They changed history. They're all up in arms about Trump collusion with Russia, that hoax, because the threat it might represent to be able to blackmail a United States president. And here you had clear, convincing evidence of a vast web of financial entanglements of a future president they weren't even concerned about. They're not concerned about it now. Or they're just doing a CYA exercise, a modified limited hangout, just providing enough truth. So you consider the impact, the interference that the media and certain elements in our federal law enforcement and intelligence agencies, how they interfered in our election. What Russia hoped to achieve pales in comparison to the interference that those corrupt individuals had on our election. And it changed history for the worse.
Speaking to Senator Ron Johnson of Wisconsin. Senator, the end of Title 42 authority from the CDC is going to be upon us in just a matter of weeks here. There's already reporting of over 100,000 would-be illegal migrants, largely from Central America and South America, who are making their way in caravans to the U.S.-Mexico border, probably going to arrive right around the time that Title 42 goes away as a means of or as a tool for Border Patrol to at least turn some people back who enter illegally. What do you think the Biden administration plan is here? Because Clay and I keep pointing out, in an election year and not that far away from the fall, and also this is likely to carry on through the summer and perhaps into the fall, seems like this is kind of disastrous. But what are we missing, or what needs to happen?
It's the plan that every Democrat presidential candidate announced during the primary. Complete open borders. I mean, when you say you're not going to deport anybody, you're going to offer illegal immigrants free health care, you throw open the borders. And, of course, Biden dismantled all the successful programs that pretty well stopped the flow of unaccompanied children, families exploiting our asylum laws, stopped building the wall. It's cost us more not to build it than to actually build it. These guys want open borders. I can't explain it. I think I understand what they want to do, but it makes no sense. But now you end Title 42. Last year it was about 1.25 million people that got in, either encountered and then dispersed, or got in as a known got-away. Over 1 million people were turned away or sent back under Title 42. But there are tens of millions of people that want to come into this country, and when they realize that there's no constraints now whatsoever, there's no consequence, it's complete open border. Who knows what the flood's going to be coming up the next few months, the next few years under the Biden administration.
You're listening to Senator Ron Johnson of Wisconsin, and I know a lot of you are listening to us in the state of Wisconsin, including Milwaukee, where we're the most listened to show. You guys got to get out and make sure you're supporting Senator Ron Johnson in this election in November. And I'm fully endorsing you, Senator, but I just want everybody in Wisconsin, just based on the 3 answers that you've given us so far, to understand how important it is to have you there in the Senate as we roll into 2023. But I want to ask you this, too. You're talking about the border, Title 42. I'm sure that it is fascinating to you as it is to us. They managed to open the border saying that COVID is no longer an issue, while simultaneously saying we need 15 more days of people wearing masks on airplanes and in airports and on trains. It is such a duplicitous lie. How infuriating is that to you, to see the divergence of treatment based on the southern border and everybody on airplanes?
Well, it's totally infuriating and completely frustrating. And about half of America is equally as infuriated and equally frustrated, but the other half is still listening to mainstream media the corrupt, complicit advocates for the Democrat Party, the far left. And that's what we're up against. So just real quick, RonJohnsonForSenate.com. That's how you can help me financially, because I don't have an opponent right now in the Democrat Party. What I have is the media completely opposed to me. They want me out as well. So that's what we're all up against, a complicit media, a deep state, and, again, policies that are just destructive for America, that are weakening us. We've got to wake up. It's not just about financial support. It's getting out and talking to your friends, your family, neighbors, getting them out to the polls and voting in November.
What are you seeing, by the way, on the ground in Wisconsin? Are you feeling that? I know it's April and we're still 6 or 7 months away, but Wisconsin is such an important toss-up state, and your race is such an important part of that. What are you seeing and feeling on the ground there?
Well, on our side, I am seeing far greater concern than I experienced in 2010 during the Tea Party movement. I mean, people are coming up to me with tears in their eyes, tears streaming down their cheeks, just saying we have to save this country. So on our side, there is just deep, deep concern, and it's legitimate concern. You know, the other side, they're still being bamboozled. I mean, Wisconsin is a split state, and, you know, the opinion is hard on both sides. So, you know, unfortunately, you know, we're fighting over a very small slice of the electorate that is persuadable. So we got to get out there and we got to persuade them. And the best people to persuade other folks are people that know each other. And so that's why nobody can sit on the sidelines here. You have to start engaging in a conversation with every friend, every family member, every neighbor, and tell them what's at stake. Freedom. Freedom is at stake. That's what we're fighting for. That's what this is all about. I can't think of anything more important. Let's face it, over 1 million Americans died defending our freedom. The least those of us who recognize what's happening in this country can do is get out there and do everything we can to win in November.
Senator Ron Johnson of Wisconsin. Senator, great to have you. We'll talk soon.
Stay well.
Our buddy Alex Berenson in the mix now. You know him as the author of Pandemia, an excellent book on the COVID pandemic and the many lies told by the so-called medical establishment during it. And also check out his Substack. I am a subscriber. Full disclosure, I think it's excellent. And so is Clay. Mr. Alex Berenson, good to have you back, sir.
Good to be back, guys.
So it feels like now, you know, usually we understand where, if you will, the COVID narrative from the Fauciites is going. I feel like I'm not seeing their authoritarian matrix as clearly right now. You have some cases rising a little bit in places like New York City. I'm seeing some masking coming back. Philly's brought masking back. But meanwhile, everyone's seeing what's going on in Shanghai, where they've turned the entire city of 25 million into prisoners and are murdering people's pets to prevent them from being reservoirs of COVID, as if that's going to do anything. I mean, Alex, where are we with this right now? It feels like, do you tell us?
It's very interesting you mentioned Shanghai, because actually I have not written about that. I've been a little light on the Substack the last couple of weeks, in part because I'm putting a book proposal together for a book sort of about the origins of COVID and how we got to 2020, which is a heck of an interesting story. But I'm working on a Substack today about Shanghai because it is so fascinating what's happened there. You know, the Chinese have gone through this insanely intense lockdown the last couple of weeks in Shanghai, which they might or might not try to spread to the rest of the country. And yeah, it's insane for a couple of reasons. First of all, it's clearly not working. They had 27,000 cases in Shanghai. Now, Shanghai is a big city; it has 25 million people. But as you said, they had 27,000 cases in a day, which is equivalent to more than 300,000 in the U.S. So it's not working, yet they're doubling down on it. And no one has really offered a great explanation as to why that is.
So, Alex, when you look at the numbers out here, we talked, I think it was a couple of weeks ago, about what was going to happen with BA2. And there's no doubt that in the East Coast of the United States so far, there has been an increase in the BA2. But it hasn't been that substantial. What is the data showing you about what we are going to see from BA2 right now?
So it's interesting with BA2. You're right. There hasn't been as big of an increase as I think people expected. And if you look at the UK and Northern Europe, those places had a big surge last month, but it wasn't as big as the original Omicron surge, and it came back down. Now, to me, that suggests that there is probably some protection that you have from if you are infected with Omicron, as so many people were, from BA2, so that this variant, doesn't look like it's going to cause this massive wave of infection/reinfection that we thought. It may also be that it's just so close to the original Omicron surge that people, whether they got a booster, which we know provides some short-term protection, or whether they were infected and recovered, have some protection. I don't think you can read too much into this. There'll be another variant, and it won't be one that's on anybody's radar right now. And we don't know when that'll happen, but it will happen in the next couple of months. So that, you sort of have to think about that, not about what's happening right now. I'll tell you one fact that you will not hear anywhere else, which is that right now in the U.S. we're at the lowest level of COVID deaths, since last summer, when we were as low as we had been since this whole thing started. In the UK and in Northern Europe, which are much more highly vaccinated and boosted countries than the U.S., they are not at those low levels. In fact, the UK, which is only 1/5 the size of the U.S., has about 2/3 as many COVID deaths right now. So how you get from that to saying vaccinations work in the long run, I don't know. They're going to keep saying it. They're going to keep saying, go get boosted, go get double boosted, go get triple boosted. But when you actually look at what's happening on the ground in these European countries that are highly mRNA vaccinated, you're not seeing any benefit right now.
We're speaking to Alex Berenson, author of Pandemia, and you can subscribe to his Substack, where he handles a whole range of topics, including COVID. Alex, if I had to make you, and we're going to force you to sit down in the chair with a crystal ball and tell us what you see, this September, October, around that period of time, are there mask mandates and reinstituted vaccine mandates in major American cities and in blue states in the run-up to the midterm election?
Oh, wow, you're going to make me, huh? I'm going to say no. That's not because I think, I think this is going to continue. I mean, I think we're going to live with COVID now. We're going to live with it. The vaccines have failed. They've failed to eradicate it or eliminate it. None other than Dr. Anthony Fauci said that last week. But are we going to see a political response like we saw 2 years ago or last year? I don't think so. I mean, I don't think anybody has the willpower. And I was in Utah earlier this week, and the masks were off. And once the masks come off for everybody, not for most people, but for everybody, it's over. Right? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what's happening medically on some level. Politically, the epidemic ends when the masks come off. And I don't think people in blue states, I mean, there's this hardcore people who can't get over this, but I think most people are done at this point. And things would have to get really, really bad for that to change.
Alex, you're in the middle of a lawsuit with Twitter right now. Elon Musk is trying to take over Twitter. It appears that Twitter is doing everything they can to keep that from happening. What is your take there, and what impact, if any, do you think it might have on your situation where you have been suspended and basically kicked off Twitter? With Elon back, I presume you'd have a lot better chance to get back on. I'm curious what your relationship is like with him and how closely you've been following this story.
Well, I've certainly been following it very closely. It's not a secret that a couple years ago, Elon and I, had a discussion actually about founding a website or a news service that would have been sort of an independent, counterweight to places like the New York Times. It didn't go forward, probably for the best. But I will also say that that I threw out the idea to him a couple of years ago that he should buy Twitter, and at that time, he had $100 billion instead of $300 billion. So the idea of spending $50 billion on Twitter probably wasn't as interesting to him, but I'm glad to see that he's decided to do this. I am certainly rooting for him. I believe that he believes in free speech. I believe that and hope that he would run Twitter in a hands-off way. Look, if it becomes something where he takes it over and you're not allowed to say anything bad about Elon Musk and Tesla, that would be a disaster. I don't think that's what he has in mind. I would love for him to win because I believe he would open it back up to me and all the people who've been banned unfairly and wrongly. Meanwhile, my lawsuit is going ahead. We have a hearing in federal court in San Francisco 2 weeks from today. We will hope for the best. I believe that Twitter, I believe we have a strong case, but Section 230 provides a lot of protection for these companies. That's not a secret.
By the way, Musk just said apparently during his TED Talk that he has a plan B if the initial buyout offer, a purchase offer, I should say, is not accepted. I think we all know the board is not going to accept. I'm not even sure if we all assume, whether it's even official or not, that they're not going to accept this. We know what kind of woke lunacy is at the top of the Twitter hierarchy. Alex, do you think, I mean, you know how corporations function, how this stuff goes down. You think he's going to be able to pull this off?
I mean, it's tricky because he can put a number on the table that it becomes very hard for them to say no to. They have a fiduciary duty to the shareholders. And if Elon comes along, I know he said 54.20 is his best offer, but what if he makes it 64.20 or 70? We know it's going to end in 4.20, whatever it is. But what if he makes it 74.20? And and he says, but you know what? You have a week to make up your mind, and then I'm going to start my own competitor. And so if he does actually do that, the stock goes back to $30. Well, if you're a board member, you get sued for that. And so there is a number where I think it becomes very hard for them to say no. I don't know if it's this number, but we know that Elon has the money to do this if he wants to force it. Trying to guess how the world's richest man, what he's going to do is probably even harder than trying to figure out what COVID's going to do. But he has the ability to, in the words of The Godfather, make them an offer they can't refuse.
Alex, last question for you quickly here. For people out there who may not know what the impact of Twitter is, a lot of our people aren't on there. Can you crystallize for us what it meant to you to be able to use that platform and make your arguments? And I understand you still have Substack, but how that has changed with you not being able to speak to the masses on that town square?
Oh, sure. I mean, that's a great point. And I think it's lost sometimes because Twitter is not as big. It's not nearly as big as Facebook. It's not nearly as big as Amazon or Google. It's, in terms of its size and its market cap, it is smaller. But in terms of its reach as a journalism platform, and this is the point we make in our lawsuit, it is by far the most important platform for journalism in the world. Twitter is the reason why two years ago at this time, 2 years and a month ago, most people didn't know who I was. If they did know me, they knew me, Buck, as you knew me through as a spy novelist who'd once worked for the New York Times. I was able to present facts about COVID to an audience that was basically unlimited on Twitter, and no one could stop me. And my audience went from 7,000 to 350,000, but that substantially understated its reach. In August of last year, my tweets were viewed 200 million times. Okay, I didn't have to pay for that. I didn't have to set up an infrastructure for that. I was able to be part of a worldwide conversation about, whether the vaccines were working or not, about COVID and lockdowns and mitigation measures. And Twitter made that possible. There's no other place on earth that could have done that for me. And that's why it's such an important platform for free speech. And it's not just me. It's everybody. Anybody can do this. Twitter has really changed journalism, probably for the better.
Well said, Alex Berenson. We'll continue to allow you to reach our audience with this platform. Keep up the good work, and good luck on that new book proposal.
Thank you, sir.
Got some big questions to pose to our friend Senator Bill Hagerty of the great state of Tennessee, which, of course, Clay, big Tennessee fan, but everyone loves Tennessee. Senator, thanks for being with us.
It's great to be back with you. Thank you.
What do you make of the situation as it's unfolding right now at the southern border, currently beyond the capacity of Border Patrol to process the people illegally crossing as of today? That's already happening. They think it might double, maybe even triple within 30 days. What is the Biden administration thinking?
The Biden administration is not thinking at all about what's happening at the border. If they were, they wouldn't be allowing this. They won't go there. Joe Biden won't go to the border. Democrat politicians won't go. I recently led a group of Tennessee sheriffs and mayors down there because we're dealing with the aftermath. What's happening at that border right here in Tennessee. They're turning every town into a border town. And I'll tell you this, each month here in Tennessee is worse than the month before it in terms of the number of overdoses and deaths, most of it due to fentanyl, all of it coming across that southern border. It's the Chinese Communist Party shipping the fentanyl and its precursors into Mexico. They're working with their partners in the drug cartels. Those cartels control the entirety of the northern border. They have lost complete control of the northern border of Mexico to the drug cartels. The Mexican government cannot control them, and those cartels are controlling that border and ours. They're using humans to basically take the Border Patrol officers and get them completely distracted and tied up, and then they're shipping the fentanyl across in major quantities to poison our youth here in America. It's just terrible.
Senator, appreciate you coming on. As you discuss that situation at the border, it appears that a lot of Democratic senators, probably not coincidentally, a lot of them in very much toss-up states and running for re-election, are opposed to the Biden administration's decision on Title 42. What sort of recourse do you guys have in the Senate to fight against this? What do you anticipate that looking like as May the 23rd moves closer and closer to fruition here?
Clay, I've actually introduced legislation to strengthen Title 42, and I need my Democrat colleagues to join me in this, because if we do, we can come back with legislation that will basically take this Title 42 rule and put it into law, and the Biden administration will have no chance but to keep it in force. My addition to that, Title 42 is based on a public health emergency. They've used COVID as the rationale. Tuberculosis could be that, a public health emergency that would cause danger and harm to Americans with people coming across that border with unknown diseases. Well, there's something else coming across that border, and it's fentanyl, it's illicit drugs, and it is killing our kids. In fact, it's the number one cause of death for Americans between the ages of 18 and 45 last year. Over 100,000 lives lost to this. This is a public health crisis. My legislation strengthens that, and that's exactly how we push back. And again, begin to arm our Border Patrol agents with the tools they need to stop this. The Biden administration has tried to destroy every tool they had. They stopped building the wall. It's just a disgrace when you see what's happening down there. Just big gaps and holes in the wall. They won't allow the Border Patrol agents to do their job. They're taking away every tool. Now, when you take away Title 42, again, which is their one tool that they had to say, look, because of the public health crisis, we can turn people away. If they remove that, we're going to be completely swamped at the border. I was told that we would have as many as 1 million people come over after the Title 42 is dropped in late May. If that were to happen, they're building up on the border now, and they're just going to crush and overwhelm our Border Patrol.
We're speaking to Senator Bill Hagerty of Tennessee. Senator, the economy is not good, as I'm sure everyone listening already knows, and you know, inflation number just came out this week, 8.5%. The Biden regime is struggling to come up with an explanation other than it's Putin's fault. What are you seeing and hearing about how this is going to go in the midterms, how much of an effect this will have? And is your expectation that until there's different leadership, it's just going to continue to get worse? I mean, it's remarkable. Biden keeps saying, I believe even still, that the way to deal with inflation is to pass his $5 trillion spending package.
It's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. They believe that spending more money reduces inflation. This started back in March of last year when Biden came in and shoved through on a completely partisan basis. You remember, not a single Republican vote. They shoved through a $1.9 trillion stimulus package. The economy was already moving in a positive direction. I warned then that it would set off inflation that they wouldn't be able to control. They did it anyway. Again, with 50 partisan votes and Kamala Harris casting the tie decision, they came in and shoved another $1.9 trillion of stimulus into an economy that was already overheating, and they set this thing off. The other thing they did, though, that I think was even more serious than the stimulus spending that they put in place, was the war that Joe Biden waged on the oil and gas industry here in America. He started that on day one. He canceled the Keystone XL pipeline. He forbade drilling on federal lands, whether they be onshore or offshore. They've killed the permitting process for pipelines. What they've done is sent a message to the capital markets that you shouldn't invest in oil and gas in America. We're going to destroy the return on your investment. So that's dried up capacity in the oil and gas industry. No new investment is going there. That had the effect of increasing domestic energy prices, of course, but it also had a global impact because these energy prices are all tied. So the energy price increases that we saw at the pump, at diesel fuel, gas, we've seen it in heating oil throughout America, some places double. What we've also seen is this has happened on a global basis. In fact, the biggest beneficiary of the price increase that Biden kicked off, Vladimir Putin, because they're the second largest producer of oil in Russia. So he's actually inadvertently funded Putin's war machine at the same time he set off inflation here in America. This is all Joe Biden's fault. Now what he's trying to do is blame it on the Ukraine invasion. This was well underway before Putin ever invaded Ukraine. All Joe Biden did was fund it.
Senator, you've got a good business background. You've been involved in a lot of companies over the years. This just happened in the last hour or so, so you may not have had a lot of time to digest it. but Twitter's board has adopted a poison pill to effectively, it appears, keep Elon Musk from being able to buy the company and implement more free speech freedoms so that people can say what they actually think in a marketplace of ideas. What are your thoughts on the battle over Twitter, on the board's actions from both the business and political perspective?
Well, let's just give our listeners a quick rundown of what a poison pill is. A pill is a mechanism that evidently the Twitter board is. I knew they were contemplating it. I'm sorry to hear they went ahead and did it because I think they violated their fiduciary duty. In most cases, that's the result. Twitter shareholders are going to suffer because of this, because this poison pill mechanism basically means if Elon Musk takes steps to acquire at a premium to acquire the stock of Twitter, there's an automatic dilution provision that essentially wipes out and dilutes the investment. So it's going to basically damage the value of the company. They're willing to sacrifice shareholder value so they can pursue their own control, keep management in place, and so they can continue to pursue their own political agenda because they've already contorted Twitter into a political machine. I think that probably has already suppressed shareholder value. Elon Musk probably sees the potential to unlock that value because he can make it an open forum, not subject to censorship and not subject to political bias. That would probably already unleash a lot of value. And now the board of directors is going to put in place a poison pill mechanism to not allow them to go ahead and exercise the premium that is being offered. That's very detrimental to shareholders. I'm certain there'll be a tremendous number of lawsuits over this.
Two more things for you quickly, Senator Hagerty. One, do you think those lawsuits are likely to be successful? Right, it's one thing to sue, it's another thing to actually get a judgment. And then is there a pathway? I know you're not on the Twitter board and you're not sitting around looking at the M&A possibilities here or what the actual structure is of Twitter internally. But is there a way that Elon Musk, I mean, he's the richest man in the world, can he force a buy of Twitter even if Twitter tries to stop him? You know what I mean? Is there a nuclear option?
Well, I've served on New York Stock Exchange boards, NASDAQ boards. There are a variety of options that he has in the Delaware courts. I'm not sure where Twitter is incorporated, but it depends on which court system the suits are brought in. The options, though, are multiple on the lawsuit side, as well as the financial mechanisms that he can use to obtain control of indirect means, direct and indirect means. So the answer is I haven't fully analyzed it. Well, I'm not certain what tact he may take next, but certainly Elon Musk has an enormous amount of resources available to him to pursue this if he wants to.
Senator Hagerty, appreciate it. And by the way, I'm looking forward to seeing you at Mar-a-Lago on Tuesday with President Trump for a big event.
I look forward to being there with you, Clay. That'll be great. I look forward to seeing you there.
Should be a lot of fun. That is Senator Hagerty of Tennessee. We bring in now Jesse Kelly, who is a good friend of both of ours. Have we had you on since the Houston event, Jesse? That was such an awesome, fun time we had down there with Michael Berry and all the listeners that we've got in the Houston area where you live. And, that was a lot of fun that night.
I had no idea it was going to be that much fun. I'll be honest with you, because I don't like events. I want to be home. I want to relax and watch a documentary like an old man. That was a blast. That was an absolute blast.
It really was. And by the way, Buck and I are going to have you up to Nashville at some point. I know I talked to your wife. I don't think you guys have ever really spent any time in Nashville, right? We're going to do a Clay and Buck event sooner or later in Nashville. We'll get you up here. I think you guys will have a good time here as well.
Well, you don't have to twist my arm to come drink beer with you and Buck. I'll tell you that much. And I've only been in Nashville, done an overnighter, did a quick overnighter there. I took my son there, and it's one of those amazing cities I'm worried the liberals are going to ruin if they aren't already.
So, Jesse,
it's so far good.
Jesse, what happens now, given that it's like the Democrats are in the basement, they can't go any lower, the poll numbers are atrocious. Anyone who's being objective, over at when they're not covering some external or foreign policy issue or the war in Ukraine, when they bring it back to domestic matters at MSNBC or CNN or wherever, they all look like they're at some kind of a funeral just discussing Biden's poll numbers. What do they do now? What happens now? It just feels like there's almost no rational opposition to the argument that Biden is awful at this job and Democrats are bad at governance. So where do they go?
They keep going down, and they go down even faster because these are not – we have to understand the JFK Democratic Party is gone. It's long gone. Even the Bill Clinton Democratic Party is gone. These people are full-blown communists now, and they don't know how to moderate or slow down or back off. If I was to put Buck or Clay in charge of the Democratic Party today, you guys would walk in, you'd gather everyone around, you'd say, okay, you shut up, you, no more trans talk, you, we're done with the CRT. You would immediately try to moderate them to mitigate the losses that are coming at the midterms. But that's because you're both sane people. Everyone listening right now, that's what they would do. These people are not sane. Instead, they're going to go all in. You watch. They're going to spend the next, I don't know how many months to the election, doubling down and tripling down on everything that's killing them, because that's the only direction they know how to go. Now, that's their great advantage, is they always play offense. They're never on defense. They're always trying to move forward. But again, like many things in life, your greatest advantage can quickly become your biggest disadvantage. And there's just nobody... There's no one there who can bang everyone's head together and say, shut up, stop, we're changing direction. Ideally, that would be Joe Biden, but look at Joe Biden. Is Joe Biden going to call in a conference and bring Nancy Pelosi in and the head of the DNC and congressman here and senator there and say, okay, everybody put the word out. We are rearranging things.
Jesse, did you think Biden, because I saw some back and forth on this, did you think Biden was trying to shake the hand of a non-existent person for a second, or was he actually signaling to people off stage?
I actually, to be honest, as much as I enjoy Joe Biden's senior moments, I actually thought this one, I didn't think he was trying to shake somebody's hand. I thought he was signaling to someone off stage. Now, he did turn around and was clearly lost as to how to get off the stage. And at this point, I know it looks bad, but why can't we get a handler up there for Joe Biden right there when he's done speaking to just, take him by the arm? You can make it not as obvious and say, hey, Joe, we're going this direction. This is a human being who's very clearly lost and not doing well. It looks really bad for the country that the president can't seem to get off stage ever.
Jesse, I feel like this Twitter and Elon Musk battle, sometimes you get stories that perfectly epitomize what the stakes are. And I feel like this one really is as it pertains to big tech, because on the one side, you have Elon Musk, who's worth $300 billion and looks around, and I really do believe this is his motivation, and says, I've got more money than almost anyone has ever had in the history of the world. But based on the way we're going right now, I'm not confident that the world is going to continue to be a free place. Let me take 10% of my wealth and help to create a more free society. And on the other side, you have people saying, hey, it's too scary if everyone can say what they actually think. We've got a rigged system right now in control in Twitter. Let's keep this guy Elon Musk from having power. And so you have the communists going up against the capitalist in social media. Does that crystallize for you too what's going on? I mean, it just feels perfect to me to encapsulate to people who may not pay a lot of attention in big tech and social media what's going on.
Oh, you nailed it. It's not, honestly, as much about Twitter or Elon Musk as it is a gigantic reveal of just how rotted and corrupt our total system is, and just what these people will do to protect what they've got going. I mean, we have a rotted government. We have a rotted big tech. We have rotted entertainment. We have rotted sports, as you talk about all the time, Clay. And when you get to a point in a society where it's all rotted and corrupt, societies don't generally turn and change direction on their own. None of these people are going to look in the mirror and say, hey, we've screwed everything up. We have to reform. Reformers are going to start to rise and try to change things and make things right. I would argue Trump was the first of these. Elon Musk is the second, and the system struck down Trump, 2 impeachments, a Russian collusion investigation. They're going to do the same thing to Elon Musk, and what this is going to do is reveal to more and more people just how bad it is. I mean, it's really, really bad. An underreported part of the story is, now this is still officially rumor, but we had organizations like Fox News reporting on it yesterday, that the Justice Department was talking about launching an investigation into Elon Musk. We're not that far removed from the NSA spying on Tucker Carlson and leaking private text messages to the press. That's how rotted and bad it is. It's really bad, and we're going to experience a lot more of it.
We're speaking to Jesse Kelly, syndicated radio host of the Jesse Kelly Show. Jesse, what do you think the primary messaging modes of attack between now and when the ballots are cast need to be for Republicans who want to not just win, but scorched earth the other side, if you will? Is it parental involvement in children's education? Is it the wide open borders? Is it crime? Is it all the above? Is it the economy? Where do we go?
I would say it's the parental thing, and I continue to ask people on the ground what they're hearing, these grassroots organizers out there, and I hear that from every single one of them. This gross LGBTQ, whatever it is, indoctrination of children in schools is something that turns off parents almost universally. The Democrat numbers, when you poll Democrat parents on whether they want their kids learning this in schools, the majority of Democrats don't want that at all. Parents do not want their kindergartners learning about sex in school. And this is an issue that the right has been scared of and is still scared of, and they should not be. These people are psychopath child groomers, and they really are. They're really after your kids, and when you expose them for that, it drives them insane because they've enjoyed educating our kids for so long. And this is the issue that the GOP should be running on from New York to California and everywhere in between. Wade into this. It is the ultimate political winner.
All right, I've got one of the most difficult questions you've probably ever been asked in your life. Which decade was better, the 1980s or the 1990s? I don't know if you saw the poll that I put up, but it is. I mean,
your ridiculous poll, Clay.
All right. So it may not be a hard answer for you then.
It's the 80s. It's the 80s. The 90s. Look, and I was a 90s kid, too. I was born in 81, so obviously I experienced both decades. But the 1980s, we're talking everything from Reagan to Guns N' Roses in their heyday. The 90s got a little dark towards the end. And I don't want to be painted as anti-90s. But the 80s was the greatest decade in this country. I loved, even the music was better in the 80s. The 80s music might be the best music decade ever in the history of America.
I just want to add
totally
I got to
disagree.
I got to tell you something, Clay. Jesse Kelly prefers raisins to chocolate chips in his cookies. So can he be trusted on anything at this point?
The one area, by the way, that I think you totally whiffed on is 90s music is way better than 80s music. Now, I think 80s movies are better than 90s movies. I think you could argue 90s versus 80s sports. Do you like Montana and the 49ers or Jordan and the Bulls more? Like, you can argue that, but to me, 90s music, more variety, right? You like old school rap, like back in the day. You got the rise. Now, it is kind of a dark group when you talk about the rise of all the guys out on the Seattle scene, who end up, you had the
grunge.
Kurt Cobains of the world. Yeah, the grunge, but that was kind of a dark world, right? Like the grunge scene.
Yes, they were not very happy. Things did not end well for some of them.
Yeah, not very well at all. So I can see that as being kind of a maudlin universe that we created there.
I also want to get Jesse's take here on this because you keep posing to other people. Jesse, speaking of the system, Clay, who in some ways is just such an optimist, believes that Hunter Biden could actually face serious federal criminal charges while Joe Biden is president. And we have a bet that this year he thinks that he will actually face charges. I say that he will not. Where do you come down on this, but also how do you assess this thing right now, the whole Hunter Biden situation?
I kind of agree with both of you, and I know that doesn't make sense. Let me explain really quickly. I normally would be king cynic right there with you, Buck, and say he's never going to face charges. They're going to find a way to wash it away. But I actually believe the Democrats, as insane as they are, I think they are smart enough to realize that Joe Biden is a big liability. And as unpopular as the party is, he somehow drags it down even worse. I've made this prediction. I know it sounds crazy. I think they're going to run him out of office after the midterms. I think they want him gone, and therefore I think the Hunter Biden stuff is a useful tool to get him gone. We all know how these things work. Couple meetings, couple closed-door meetings, and hey, Joe, your son Hunter's going down. There's a chance you could get implicated in this, or you could retire for health reasons and let Vice President Dome take over. I think that's the route they're going to go.
I don't think there's any way they put Kamala in office, Buck, and Jesse too. Like, I think that she has been so bad. I think they'll allow Joe Biden to kind of ride it out unless his health just becomes so bad they can't even justify it. I think they will, but I think in February or March he announces he's not going to run, and then we have a total free for all in the Democratic Party. And I've said that I think we end up with Hillary as the nominee in 24.
I actually agree with that because their backup plans all went south. I mean, again, they nominated Dome because she was a black woman. Well, she's actually gotten less popular. The more people get of her, the less popular she is. And the backup to Dome was Rear Admiral Buckig, but he can't get out of a primary because we have poll after poll after poll showing the fact that he's gay is a big deal in the black community. And without the black vote, you're not winning the Democrat primary. So you've got to go searching for something else. So you're right. It's going to be Grandma Death.
Man, a possible Hillary versus Trump again throwdown.
8 years later.
It would be totally full circle. Folks can listen to the Jesse Kelly podcast or tune into him live on the Jesse Kelly Show in syndication, 6 to 9 Eastern Time, nationwide. Mr. Kelly, give the fam a high five from us, and thanks for calling in. We appreciate it.
Be good, fellas.